Welcome to the Sportscast, September 17th, 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Periscope, and iTunes. If you're on iTunes, please leave a rating, review. It'll help us out tremendously. Visit us at thesportscast.net. Also, follow us on Twitter at thesportscast. Today, this is kind of my new day of running the show. I'm here with Nick Rossetti, and we're going to be talking a little bit of college football. What's up, Nick?
Ty, how's it going, man? Really excited to be on with you and excited for the college football season from the SEC standpoint, at least, is starting this weekend, and then really excited to touch on some Big Ten and Pac-12 as well.
Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, whatever.
I know.
We're going to probably cover, mostly on my show, we're going to try to stay at, kind of around the Big Ten, Pac-12, but we can veer into other avenues. It's all good. So what are you thinking about? But since we brought up the subject, what are you thinking about? You're an Alabama alum. What are you thinking about this weekend?
I think the spread is 28.5. We cover that easily. Handily, we cover the spread.
And are you playing at Alabama?
No, we're playing in Columbia, in Missouri.
Oh, okay. Well, but does it really even matter?
No, it doesn't. Although I do think they are going to have fans. I know Bama's going to have fans this year.
Like how many?
I think 25%. So what would that be, like 25,000?
That's not bad.
People? No, it's not. And they actually the whole funny backstory for this whole thing in terms of the season being delayed from Bama's perspective is they've been working on Bryant-Denny Stadium all summer, making slight adjustments and upgrades to the stadium itself. And this actually gave them time to finish all of the projects. So they actually have it done, completed. It'll be ready to go 2 weeks from now when A&M comes rolling in. But
so it would not have been ready if it hadn't been.
No, it would not have been ready.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Some silver lining in delaying my season a couple of weeks.
I mean, it's kind of weird for me personally. Obviously, I like a full college football season, the full stadium. I like everything normal. But to get what we're getting under the circumstances of this year, I don't know. I'm kind of more than happy as how.
I'm with you as well. I would much rather this than have nothing. And for a long time, that's really back in April and May, if you had asked me this question, if we'd had a season in the first place,
wasn't looking
I would have said no chance. Absolutely no chance. Now, we've had some hurdles and we've had conferences pull out. Now they're back in. So, I think overall, I'm just happy that it seems like everybody's on the same page now, or at least most conferences are on the same page that they want to come back at some point. And they're going to play at some point. Whereas I feel like in the middle of the summer, we were at this kind of crossroads where some conferences were hell-bent on playing and some conferences were hell-bent on not playing. And we can get into the dynamics of why that happened. And
we know.
But now we're at a point where we're going to get Big Ten, Pac-12, maybe SEC guaranteed, ACC, Big 12. So, I think overall from where we were to where I'm at or where we are right now, big improvement and just excited that we're going to get the games that everybody was excited to see.
And actually the Mountain West, you probably don't follow the group. Do you follow Group 5? I don't know that.
Yeah. Well, okay. I follow is the American Conference technically Group of 5?
I mean, they're a really good Group of 5. But
yeah. So I know this is the first time we've ever chatted, but I grew up in the Annapolis, Maryland area. So I'm a big Navy fan. Big Navy fan.
Nice.
Yeah. So I watched them get absolutely destroyed by BYU. But
hey, that's last week.
I know. Big comeback. But and I really loved, because it was funny, particularly from the Bama side of things, when the game against USC fell apart in Jerry World, our season opener. I was really excited because there were rumors about BYU possibly taking their place, and I've heard really good things about that program and some of the things that they were doing. I have a buddy that actually works on the videography and digital media for the athletics department there.
Oh, okay.
And he does all their different sports. But anyway, I was really excited, and they've looked really good. BYU as overall the last couple of games that they've had, particularly when they put a thrashing on Navy. But
They had a couple. They've had the last two games canceled, right? Because they beat
Yes,
Navy really
pushed.
bad.
Yeah, they
It was
delayed.
postponed.
Yeah,
Delayed.
postponed.
And that's so like we could go off on rabbit trails and stuff, but even like now they're starting the Big Ten in October 24th, and people are like, are they going to play enough games? And they're even saying that about the Pac-12 is probably going to start at the end of October. And I'm kind of, and I remember I saw Dan Patrick interviewing Larry Scott, and Larry Scott, who I don't like, I think he's a terrible commissioner, and most people would agree in the Pac-12 or even across the country that knows anything about the Pac-12. But he did say, he made one point. He's like, you don't know how many games are going to be played for anyone. So if we get a season off, we feel like we'll have a chance at the playoff. And I'm like, you know what? I have to agree with him there because there's been so many games canceled for Virginia Tech, Carolina, Charlotte, Texas Christian, and was it Houston? And
Yeah.
we don't, I mean, BYU's had two games canceled. Memphis has had two games canceled. There could be a team that ends up playing only 7-8 games if they hold the playoff to the deadline. They might move that because if all of a sudden so many people are getting it canceled, they might be just like, I'm moving back and allowing more people to play. But I just thought it was a good comment by Scott being like, you can't say us playing only 7-8 games is not enough. We don't know how many games people are going to play and how it's looking so far with all the cancellations and with all of the postponements. I think he's right. I mean, I just don't know how many games people are going to play because this contract tracing is just killing games and making people cancel.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And since the playoff era, so 2015 till now, the committee has never had this level of decision making that needs to be done beyond the scope of just watching the games and evaluating the different teams that are going to be playing. Because, for example, Ohio State. Let's say Ohio State only plays 5 games or 6 games maybe out of an 8-game schedule. But in those 6 games, they look phenomenal because preseason, before all of this happened, Ohio State was definitely picked to do really well, probably picked to win the Big Ten and to make the college football playoff. So take that team versus, let's say, Florida in the SEC. And let's say Florida wins the SEC East this year, and then they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship. So they have a 1 loss and they play 10 games. So they're 9-1. And Ohio State plays 6 games. They go 6-0, but that's all the games they can have. And you have to choose between those 2 teams as the 4th team in the playoff. How are you going to do that? Is it going to be, are they going to have to put a game limit at some point in terms of you have to play X amount of games to qualify? Is it purely going to be based on the same motto that everybody hates, the 4 best teams? So, I think from a committee standpoint, and if I'm not mistaken, isn't the chairman of the committee this year Notre Dame's athletic director? Or
is it Notre Dame, or is it the commissioner of the Big 12? Is it Notre Dame?
I thought it was Notre Dame, but I could be wrong.
You could be right. I think someone at Notre Dame is definitely on the committee. I know that.
Right. So I think that the decision making within in that room and the weekly updates that most people just never paid attention to because they didn't really matter and they tried to make a big deal out of them. Now this year it's really going to matter. Because every week you just never know who's even going to get to play. And if they get to play, how good are they going to look? That's just the step in the process. But, overall, it's going to be interesting.
I could see them doing, if it gets so many people are getting canceled games and it just is so uneven, I could see them actually saying, you know what, the Power 5 conference champions get in. And then they just figure out a seeding from there. I could see that being one option. The other option is I could see them totally scratching the Power 5 and then the Power 5, scratching the Power 5. Get rid of the Pac-12. No, I think I could see them totally scratching the playoff and actually just saying, you go with your bowl alignment. So like the SEC champion goes to Sugar Bowl. The Big Ten and Pac-12 go to the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl for the ACC. I believe the Big 12 is the Fiesta Bowl. And then they just and then they have the AP declare the champion. I don't know. It's such a weird year. I don't think anyone can say definitively. But if you are the Big Ten, and they obviously made a schedule, and they have 8 games starting October 24th plus the one championship game. And then I believe the Pac-12 is going to either be October 31st or November 7th, probably a 6+1 model. Just get the season in, get it done. And you don't know that 7 games, they keep on saying Pac-12, they're not going to think about it. But I mean, and Pac-12 probably not. But who knows? If Oregon's 7-0 and looks really good and dominates everyone and, beats USC in the Pac-12 championship, and then you're all of a sudden looking at a 2-loss champion in the Big 12, you're looking at the only other team other than maybe like Alabama, everyone other team in the SEC has a couple losses, and you just never know. Ohio State gets 4 games in, so you just don't know what's going to happen. To say right now definitively, if someone doesn't get going at a certain point, that they're not going to get in. I think more than anything, you just got to get going. You have to play. I mean, if you're not going to play, you don't give yourself a chance. So, like the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, just play. Just, don't worry if you're going to have enough games and if that will be enough. Just play. And I think the chips will, at that point, come up where they may.
Yeah, and I think too the scheduling in terms of like the whole idea that as we get closer into the fall and into the winter, that's the time of the year when flu season is upon us. And that there's the whole idea that you wanted to get your season off the ground before we get into those winter months, being November, December, January, when, flu cases tend to rise and the spread of a viral disease like we have going on right now with COVID-19 is going to increase. So, the idea that, or I guess the model that the Big Ten followed to this point in terms of starting on October 24th and then ending, I believe it's the December 12th or December 19th. So, I mean, to me, especially Big Ten schools, right? They are in the, northern part of the country. Like it's going to be snowing in Ohio in November and Pennsylvania and Minnesota. And so, I just all along, I never understood why. Like, first off, the idea of playing in the spring, that never made any sense to me. And I never think it made sense to anyone. I think it was a more of kick the can down the road than it is like giving people an actual understanding of why, how, and that would work. And mainly, I think the reason why it doesn't work is because you're going to ask student athletes to play 2 seasons in 1 year. Like, I just doubt it, right? Like, that was never going to fly in the first place. But anyway, going back to the Big Ten, like what scares me is that they're starting later than anybody else. And they're the ones that are most affected by weather and cold and this idea that the colder it gets, the more the flu, the disease is going to spread and stuff. And, and so that's what makes me nervous about their schedule at the moment. But who knows, like I said, we could even have a vaccine by then. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like, so we'll have to see kind of how it plays out. But what I wanted to ask you in particular, not to kind of pivot here, but it's my opinion that the Pac-12, you said you're a Pac-12 guy. And stuff. The Pac-12 has been behind in terms of recruiting over the last 5, 6, 7 seasons. And I take that from personal experience. Well, personal experience being that I'm an Alabama graduate. Guys like Bryce Young, Najee Harris, these are guys coming out of the California area. Bryce Young went to Mater Dei High School. That should be a USC commit, guaranteed every time, locked in. He has no business coming to the SEC, in my opinion.
Correct.
So if the Pac-12 either – let's say the Pac-12 doesn't play this year, hypothetically. I know you think they're going to. But how much does that set them back even further in terms of recruiting and where the conference is as it stands in terms of all the other Power 5 conferences?
Well, they're in a crap load of garbage. I mean, I don't know how to word it any different. If they don't play, the revenue, the financial, the national perspective, like you said, they are like Oregon is fine. Like the one Pac-12 school, Oregon currently has the number 3 ranked class. They've landed in Mario Cristobal's era two top 10 classes and one top 15, and they have a top 5 class right now. So Oregon, I think, even if the season got canceled, because Oregon's kind of an anomaly, it's pretty much Nike University. It is kind of an entity of itself. I think they would be fine. The rest of the conference would just massively struggle. And the conference as a whole, perception-wise, would just be defeated. They already got that narrative out there that the West Coast just doesn't care as much. They don't care as much. They care more about politics, and it's true. I mean, I'm on message boards. I follow insiders, and anytime you have a take that's like, oh man, that's weaker than soft, I'm always like, oh, it's the West Coast take. Okay. And I'll troll them on Twitter. I'll be like, oh, you're a big old softy from the West Coast. I'm just kidding around, but the perception out there is not great. And like you said, people are leaving. California last cycle, Bryce Young left. You had Joseph Nagata, wide receiver. He went out to Clemson. You had obviously Oregon has done very well, but I guess that's keeping them in the Pac-12. But USC had the number 63 ranked class last year. The year before, they were number 20, and I remember their number 20 class. I was like, that's terrible. USC, you could pretty much count every year USC through the Pete Carroll years, even through Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, you could pretty much count on USC having a top 5, top 10 class. And you saw it really falling apart the year before. And then last year they didn't get Duji Ogalale. I probably said his name wrong. Sorry. I'm trying to think. Miles Maroa from Mater Day. I could go. I mean, initially they lost Chris Steele 2 years ago. He ended up actually transferring back. They lost Boo McCoy. He actually went to Texas. He actually ended up transferring back. But it just has been a kind of a reciprocal thing that's happened year after year. And even this year, Rayshawn Davis is going to LSU.
Is it Corey? So is Corey Foreman? He's still the number 1 overall recruit, right? He's from Corona, right?
And there's a pretty good chance he lands at LSU or Georgia.
Or Georgia. That's what I heard. I heard it's leaning Georgia at the moment. But yeah, that's just another example, right? Like these top line guys.
Yeah. So I think the Pac-12 is going to play. I'm pretty convinced that they are going to play this year, and so they will try to do their best to save face. And hopefully, the biggest problem in the Pac-12 over the last several years is there's been a lot of parity. There's not been that real dominant team, and they need someone to take over. And honestly, the team that's going to do it right now is Oregon, because they're the ones recruiting the best. They've had the number 1 class 2 years in a row. They're leading this year. They're probably going to land their 3rd straight number 1. So they need to almost kind of pull a Clemson-like Dilio out.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Do you see them having a similar trajectory as what Clemson had in terms of? Because Clemson in the early Dabo years were mediocre. There were actually people that used to make fun of Dabo at Clemson. People forget that because they used to blow leads all the time. His first couple of seasons. Yeah. And then they really started to pick it up recruiting wise. And then they took off.
You took off.
And what really changed face was Deshaun. Well, it started with Taj Boyd, but Deshaun Watson really brought that program into the forefront. Do you see that similarly with a program like Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, they're recruiting at the best level in the Pac-12 by a considerable margin, so they're going to have the talent advantage. This year, it's still kind of like I do a team talent formula. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but baseline talent, them and USC are pretty similar this year. But by next year, Oregon's going to be definitely number 1. And, they have good coaches. Andy Avalos is a great defensive coordinator. He's probably going to be up for some group of 5 jobs here in the next couple of years. Joe Moorhead, the innovative offensive coordinator for Penn State. He coached at Mississippi State. He's their offensive coordinator. So combined with a good recruiting class with one of the best coaching staffs in the Pac-12, I do think Oregon, if this year, this weird season, would probably be the year that maybe they don't, because they had quite a few opt-outs because the season was supposed to end. So they lost Penei Sewell in top 5 pick. I think Jevin Holland is probably going to leave. He's a number 1 first-round pick. Diamador, Lenore, and Thomas Graham, a couple starting safeties have started for the past 3 years. They opted out. So if you're going to beat them, because I think going into next year, the talent advantage and even the coaching staff advantage is going to be pretty big for Oregon. That, yes, I could see them going on a – it's always tough to say. Some are going to go on a Clemson-like run, or they're going to go like an Oklahoma-like run. Because remember, Oklahoma in the Big 12 has won 5 straight Big 12 titles. They've made the college football playoff for the last 5 years. They have gone on a very dominant run in the Big 12. People seem to forget that because they haven't played very good in the college football playoff stage, and they've gotten kind of boat raced a couple times. But so they could go on an Oklahoma-like run. To get to that Clemson-like run, you do have to have a Deshaun Watson or a Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
Or like, I know, but then you could counter back and like, well, they had Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts. Yeah, but they also had a horrible defense.
Terrible
you have to be able to put together that elite defense to go along with an elite quarterback play. And see, Clemson's always had great defenses under Brett Venables. So to answer your question, yes, I think the recruiting at a good enough level. I think their coaching staff's on a good enough level. This would be the one year that I'd say if Oregon doesn't win it, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think going forwards, yes, they're going to be the best team in the Pac-12. They were last year, and I think in the near future they will be, yes.
Yeah. How big of a, not to just, harp on Oregon here, but how big of a loss is it losing Herbert, losing a 4-year starter at QB? They have a quarterback competition going on at the moment, right? A couple of guys kind of vying it out for the top spot.
I actually think Tyler Show's pretty good. I mean, he played in garbage time, looked good, and by all reports, by everyone close to the program, he's a pretty good quarterback. Okay. He was a consensus 4-star coming out of high school there in Arizona. I think he's going to be pretty good. He is in a battle with Anthony Brown, who was a 2-year starter at Boston College. But
yeah, I think
Tyler Shough is going to be the starter, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback. The problem is it is a totally new offensive line, a receiving core that is talented. They have 4 or 5 top 100 guys. They have 2 or 3 starters back, and so they have some experience, but they still need to step it up. And then the running back, that room is back for the most part. So it just depends on how the offense gets to rolling with the new quarterback and the new offensive line.
New offensive coordinator too with
new offensive coordinator. But the thing is, that's an upgrade. Really? For sure. He's better than Marcus Arroyo, the old offensive coordinator, was a good recruiter. I don't think he was a great offensive coordinator.
Because Moorhead was Saquon's coach, right? Yep. When he had Penn State. And then I never thought he got a fair shake in Starkville. It's tough, right? Just from an SEC perspective, winning in the SEC West, in my opinion, is the hardest division in college football. And guys like Gus Malzahn at Auburn, Ed Orgeron before this last year, like if you go 8-4, your fan base is expecting playoff performances, playoff appearances, winning the SEC, and it's just so hard, even when teams like Mississippi State and Ole Miss are down. So I really didn't think he got a fair shake in Starkville. I saw what he did at Penn State with guys like Saquon and Miles Sanders too. So yeah, I think he's a good coach. I just think that who knows how long he could be at Oregon too.
And probably, if he does really well, he'll probably get another job. And there is a difference. You can be a great offensive mind. You can be a great offensive coach. You can have the ability to scheme and play call and not necessarily be a great head coach. So There is always a possibility that Joe Moorhead is this great offensive coach and not necessarily. They're not mutually exclusive. So but you made a point. When you're going to Mississippi State, you're playing against Alabama, you're playing against LSU, you're playing against Auburn, you're playing against Texas A&M. You're playing against. Well, look at Jimbo. He's a great coach. Texas A&M has a top 15 roster as far as talent, and his first 2 years haven't been great. And who knows what this year is going to be like. He's had a lot of guys opt out. So it's a tough place to win, and you're living in the greatest coach in college football history's conference, and that's just an unenviable task.
I think something too, and again, not to pivot, but something that's going to be really interesting this year, I think, and this is going across all of college football, is coaches being fired and bought out of their contracts. I think up until this point, it's been guys like it was like, for Moorhead, like I'm pretty sure he's still getting paid from Mississippi State,
I
like
think he
for
is,
a couple more years.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
like schools were not afraid to pull the trigger and not afraid to ask the donor base to fill in that we need a $20 million check to buy this guy out. And I think a lot of coaches that quote unquote would have been on the hot seat this year have now just got themselves another extra year because
Yeah, for
of
sure.
the circumstances around the loss of revenue and schools just not being willing to front the bill to buy somebody out when they've got 4 or 5 years, still left on their deal. One funny story I always like to tell is Jimmy Sexton is the agent for Nick Saban. He's the agent for a lot of the coaches in the SEC. Funny story as well. He was actually Scottie Pippen's agent who signed Scottie Pippen to that terrible deal. But yeah. So back in the day, he was Scottie Pippen's agent. But anyway, Jimmy Sexton, he's one of my favorite guys because he is the guy that gets coaches fired, gets them the buyout clause, and then the guy who they hire is his client too. So he gets a cut on the back end and the front end. Like he's running a full-on racket there. But I always love telling that story.
You cannot beat that. He's like, hey, he's in a lose-lose. He's in a win-win situation. He's like, man, fire my dude, hire my dude. Yeah. So let's touch on the Big Ten a little bit since they're coming back. What do you think of I don't really want to go into the debacle because it was a mess. I mean, 5 weeks of fighting and protesting and people being mad and lawsuits and fake sourcing and real sourcing. I followed the whole drama. It was crazy. Finally, they ended up coming back. It wasn't a great look. They weren't on the same page, and it kind of turned into a real life soap opera. What do you think of the teams moving forwards? Who do you like in the Big Ten? That might be kind of a rhetorical question, but other than Ohio State, who do you like in the Big Ten? Who do you think could have the level of possible talent to compete with Ohio State?
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna go with a team that I don't think is on a lot of people's radars, and that's Nebraska. I really like Scott Frost. I like what he did at UCF, and I know people are down on him for the first few years he's been back at the alma mater, but he finally has his team. Any coach that comes into a new program, you got to give them at least 2 or 3 years to get the guys that they want in there and get the guys that are there out. I think this is year 3 for Scott Frost. And I think he's got a lot of talent around him. He's got a really young quarterback with a lot of good talent as well. I think that Nebraska is a team to watch out for. And not to mention, going through this whole saga, they were always the ones promoting this play, right? And I feel like they're going to that's going to galvanize this team, this program. And Scott Frost is that type of guy. He's a fiery kind of guy. And I really think that Nebraska can come in and surprise some people this year.
That's an interesting. Did you see their schedule?
I did.
They have the number of first games against.
Yeah. I'm actually looking at it right now.
I'm actually, that was my childhood team. I grew up a Nebraska fan. I was a fan of Tom Osborne. I was actually a fan of Scott Frost when he was a quarterback in Nebraska.
Right.
So, and then he was actually the OC of Oregon under Chip Kelly. Under Mark Helfrich. He was wide receivers coach under Chip Kelly. So I agree that I think Nebraska's better. I do agree that he also took a while for him to get his players in there. I do agree also he has gotten better talent in there since he's been there, his recruiting rankings and such. Now, the only thing is I saw that schedule and I'm like, damn.
I know.
Do you have it right in front of you?
Yeah, I do. So I see October 24th at the Shoe.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough one, but after that, I really don't. Wisconsin lost a lot, especially when your offense is built around one player. And when Jonathan Taylor now with the Indianapolis Colts, we'll see how they rebound. They're always kind of a 7-5, 8-4 in a good year team. So we'll see how they do. But I know, and I know we can get to this a little bit later, but with JJ McCarthy, is that how you say his last name? Opting out at Michigan, the quarterback that was supposed to start this year.
No, it wasn't McCarthy. McCarthy's the recruit. You're thinking of McCaffrey.
McCaffrey.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I kind of get them confused.
Yeah,
But yeah, so they're like he's opting out. I've never. So for example, I really everybody was high on Josh Gaddis coming in as offensive coordinator at Michigan last year. Yep. I was never high on him when he was at Alabama. Of course, everyone will say I'm salty because, we were gonna offer him the job and he decided to leave for Michigan overnight, whatever. I never saw what people were so excited about. And look at Michigan's offense last year. Was that impressive to watch? I mean, I know you had some limitations with Shea Patterson, but Shea Patterson was a 5-star talent coming out of high school. If not the number one dual threat quarterback in his class.
He was,
when he was with Ole Miss. So, in terms of, Gaddis is going to come in, he's going to rejuvenate this offense. It's gonna open things up, and I just didn't see that. And even in the bowl game against Alabama, I mean, I just was not impressed. Yeah. And to say that, all of a sudden they're gonna have an LSU like turnaround, and this offense is gonna be completely rejuvenated, I just don't see it. And Michigan's defense has always been solid, but not great. I think that the gap between Ohio State and Michigan has never been bigger. So I really think that, especially in a weird year like we have right now, some of these other teams that maybe not everybody thinks about, but has a solid coach, solid foundation in a program, they have a real good shot this year, at least to make it to the Big Ten title game. And from there, anybody's game.
You have to wonder about Minnesota. They have Tanner Morgan, who's I think one of the best, maybe perhaps next to Justin Fields, the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. I believe his name's forgetting me. The guy who just opted out is trying to get back in. Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, Rashad Bateman.
And if he gets back in, that's a legit NFL receiver. They have some good defensive players. They're a team that I could see them winning the Big Ten West.
Interesting.
Good coach. I think PJ Fleck. Look what he did last year. He had them 11-2. They beat Auburn in the bowl game. Who else would I look out for? I mean, Iowa's always a solid program. They all obviously have some turmoil in their offseason. Let's see how they can overcome that. And then there's Penn State.
That's what I was just about to ask you. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Nittany Lions? Because they got Sean Clifford's coming back. Really solid QB. And Franklin always has them right there, and they just seem to like. I think it was that game against Minnesota last year that they lost. That was a real big key loss for them. But they seem to always they win a couple of games that they maybe shouldn't, and then they lose a game or two that they probably shouldn't have. It's always kind of but they're competitive, right? And I think Franklin's a really good coach.
And they're the only team that, Ohio State is definitely the most talented team by baseline. In my formula, I have them their baseline talent is number 3 in the country. The only team that is even in that ballpark is Penn State. They're like, I'm doing it off the top of my head, but I think they're like number 10 in regards in the country to baseline talent. But they are the team that has the horses. They don't have Micah Parsons. He opted out, and that guy is probably the best linebacker in college football.
Yeah, he's a freak.
They got Journey Brown and Noah Kane as 2 really good running backs. They have Pat Freiermuth, who might be the best tight end in college football, possibly. They have some other good defensive linemen. They have Brandon Smith, who was a former 5-star. They have Curtis Jacobs, who was a 5-star by 247 this last cycle. So they have guys on both sides of the ball that can line up on just a baseline talent perspective to compete with Ohio State. I think if someone were to beat Ohio State, and it's in Happy Valley now
on Halloween.
Now, is anyone going to be there?
Just imagine. I know, probably not. But just imagine though, that is probably, if not the number one game that I'm upset about, that there won't be fans in the stands, because a Saturday night in Happy Valley, a whiteout, that game would have been at like 7 or 8 o'clock kick, and on Halloween, my gosh, that would have been a sight to see for sure.
They could pull it off. They pulled it off. They beat Ohio State the year when they And I think Ohio State actually still made the playoff. But Penn State won the Big Ten. They went to the Rose Bowl and lost to USC. But yeah, I think Penn State. But long story short, I don't think Ohio State loses. I think they're undefeated, and I think that they will be in position to make the college football playoff. That is my prediction for the Big Ten.
Let me ask you this. About another dark horse team. What about Maryland?
You're from Maryland. You probably won.
Let me say, Talia Tagovailoa, starting quarterback. He got his waiver approved, so he'll be playing. He'll probably going to be starting.
Fifth string at Alabama.
Well, what do you want from us? Like, we can only get too many 5-stars to come play. But anyway, I think I like Loxley. Like, I really do. And what people don't understand is the amount of talent that comes out of the DMV area. Like, I would say that South Florida, Texas, California, and then the DMV is right there in terms of talent level. Yep. You got a lot of DeMatha. Gonzaga High School had the Caleb Williams, who's 5-star quarterback, headed to Oklahoma. Headed to Oklahoma. So I think that once he can tap into, he being Mike Loxley, can tap into that pipeline that they have there in the DMV, I really think they could start getting some talent in there and really start to possibly get out of this, mediocre 5-6 win seasons that they've had for the last, since Ralph Friedgen was there and when they were in the ACC and going to the Orange Bowl. So we'll see, but I had to bring it up before we change topics that my Maryland Terrapins, I think if we win 4 games this year, I would be excited.
4-4. I mean, that's 4-5 or 4-5. If you guys play 9 games. If I was going to pick the order, I think it's Ohio State and then Penn State and then probably Michigan in the East, and then in the West, I still am going to take Wisconsin until you can knock them off the perch. I take them, and then I probably go Iowa and then Nebraska. I just think Nebraska has a tough schedule. If they had a more feasible schedule, I think they could have a chance at it. But that's just my opinion on that. So who would you take to win it?
I'm going with the Buckeyes as well. I think, just as you mentioned earlier, the talent. It's funny how when we talk about stats and schemes and coaching and all this stuff, but when you really just look at roster to roster, I bet you that if you just look at the rosters in terms of talent and you picked games based on just looking at the rosters, a lot of the time the team with the most talent is going to win that game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So in my opinion, they are the most talented team by far, and they're one of the most deep teams as well. So, and I think that Day is one of the most – I think last year he got a lot of good promising, noise about him, but not a lot of people knew about Ryan Day, right? I think some people were kind of like not happy with that appointment after Urban Meyer. But that man can coach. Like, he really can coach and recruit too. So I think that he's if not one of the best coaches in the conference as well. So I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. Top 5, I would probably go similar to what you said. I would go Buckeyes, Penn State. I'm going to put Nebraska at 3, and then Michigan and Minnesota.
And I didn't even mention Minnesota. We're bragging about Minnesota, and I forgot. Minnesota is actually who I would think would finish second to Wisconsin.
Okay.
Wisconsin has won what? 4? Well, they didn't win 1 year, but they've won like 3 of the last 4 or 4 of the last 5 Big Ten West, and they just have a solid program. They never have the most talent. They never have the best quarterback. They never have the flashiest team, but they're always very solid. They play great on both sides of the ball. They have a solid defense, and they have a great offensive line and a good run game. And it's enough to win the Big Ten West. It has been for the pretty much last decade or so. Wisconsin has been the top-tier team there. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're sitting here making predictions, but who knows who's going to be playing game in and game out, right? So I really think that if it's going to be a wacky year, which it has been throughout 2020, if this trend continues, I think we're going to see a mix up. So who knows, right? I think we're going to see some wild stuff.
You just think there's gonna be like one team that like doesn't
Just
play enough games?
yeah, or like one team that doesn't get any positive tests, and everybody else like let's say Justin Fields has to sit out for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right, or something
They
like
still
that.
have CJ Stroud back there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Where like you just where that could be just yeah. I mean, the thing is because you think of the good teams like yeah, Justin Fields could, but then you got CJ Stroud. Maybe Trevor Lawrence, but then you got GJ Galade or sorry, I screwed his name up.
no, I know I can't say it right either.
Mac Jones, and you got Bryce Young. But who's that team that you would say, man, with a quarterback, they are a playoff level team? If they lose that quarterback, they're not really even in consideration. Is there any team that you say that is so reliant that quarterback being out is the difference between them possibly competing for a conference championship? I'm on here.
He's back. Hey, buddy.
Okay.
How you doing, man?
But who do you think is that team who could compete for a conference title, possibly for even a playoff berth? But when let's say they lose that quarterback, is someone they're not even in consideration.
And I think that for me, it's a team that actually that's already happened, which is pretty interesting. So I would actually go with the University of Georgia. I think I would. I think that they have easily, in my opinion, the best defense in the country this year by far. And I think that they have some good skill weapons in the outside in terms of receiving, and they got Zamir White and a deep running back core, good offensive line. So overall, I think that what they're missing is a quarterback, and I think they would have found that with Jamie Newman. And Jamie Newman opting out, and now there's this whole thing going on with the transfer from USC. I keep wanting to say JT Barrett, but that's not right. JT Daniels.
Yeah.
And this freshman guy. I think that the University of Georgia, if they had, let's say, Jake Fromm for one more year, they really could have made a big difference in terms of where I think they're going to end up in terms of in the SEC and making the college football playoff.
So their starting quarterback is looking like DeJuan Mathis, actually.
Yes, exactly.
So you think it wasn't necessarily what I asked, but it's a fair conversation. You think that because the fact that they didn't get Jamie Newman to stay, you think that might be the difference? Nothing to do with like the COVID stuff,
right? Okay, so to answer your COVID question, I would say a team like Florida with Kyle Trask. Just going off the top of my head here, I think that the Florida Gators really think that they're going to make some noise this year. They really do. If they're going to beat Georgia, this is going to be the year. And I think that Kyle Trask has gotten a lot of hype. Personally, I don't see it. I really don't know where it's coming from. But I think that University of Florida would be one. I look at Penn State, like Sean Clifford. If Sean Clifford can't play, that would be a tough loss for them. But overall, I think that the University of Florida would probably be my pick.
Because I had a team, and I completely, I was like thinking of it, and I'm like, name some teams. I had a team right on I was like, that team is a team that could be.
Well, there's only how many teams realistically right now do you think has a chance at the playoff? Because if you say more than 10, I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Oh,
Oklahoma?
No. He'd figure out how to get Tanner Mordecai to throw. Yes, they'd be in trouble without Spencer Rattler, but I was thinking specifically, and I don't know if they're necessarily a college football team, but I think they could compete for an ACC title, and that is North Carolina. I think Sam Howell is a really good quarterback. I think he does a lot of things. He just kind of has that it factor, making plays when it comes down to it. And if they lose Sam Howell, they could easily lose to Wake Forest. They could lose to North Carolina State because their talent level is not their talent level is a step below like Clemson, Notre Dame, and probably even Miami. So they can't afford, if they want to upset Clemson, if they want to upset Notre Dame, if they want to play with Miami, they have to have Sam Howell. So he was a guy that I was thinking of. Sorry, throat super dry.
You're right.
He was a guy that I was thinking of specifically that with him on the field, North Carolina possibly could be playing for an ACC title, possibly could upset. They almost upset Clemson last year.
Should
But
have.
without him on the field, they could lose to Duke. I mean, I just think I could see his impact on that roster being that great a difference. Keaton Slovis for USC, if the Pac-12 ever gets their crap together. With Slovis, USC maybe could win the Pac-12. They could definitely play for a Pac-12 title. Who knows? They get lucky, they go undefeated, they get in the playoff. I don't know. Without Keaton Slovis, USC might win 2 games.
What about sticking in the ACC Ian Book at Notre Dame? What would they look like without Ian Book?
I don't know who who's their backup now. Is it the kid that they brought in this year?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or like maybe they're getting one in this next recruiting class.
Is it five or something? The thing is, I don't know. The thing is, Ian Book is just kind of more of a game manager. When I think of like Ian Book or Sean Clifford, I don't think of them as like transcendent kind of players. They're kind of playing within that system. They're not going to be the guy who makes the big difference, but they're also not going to be the reason why you lose. I would, I don't know if I'd say Ian Book. And Notre Dame without him still is a pretty good team. If they could probably get another quarterback in there to be able to run that system, be able to do it's the same, I'd say similar to Sean Clifford at Penn State, possibly. See, I think that even Georgia's so talented. Actually, baseline talent, Georgia has the number 1 most talented roster in college football.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Especially defensively.
They have 16 5-stars. They have 29 top 100 players. They have 62 blue chippers. I think 75% of the roster is blue chip. So they could almost have a quarterback beat and possibly win a national title because they're so talented on defense. They have so many good running backs and offensive linemen. They could almost, but it's hard to win without the quarterback. It's proven in the college football playoff era. You look at the teams that have won, whether it be Trevor Lawrence, whether it be Joe Burrow, whether it be Ohio State didn't. They have third-string quarterback, but there was a loaded team. But for the most part, and Alabama did, but it's since then to Lawrence, Watson. It's definitely, if you have a big quarterback, it's really is a big difference. So, yeah, when I just think of quarterbacks that could be so good that they could take their teams to a conference title, playoff possible appearance, and without them, they might only win 2 games. I'm thinking of Keaton Slovis at USC. I'm thinking of Sam Howell at North Carolina. And Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. They're probably not there, but without him, they're not a good team at all. So there's a couple quarterbacks I was thinking of.
Let's talk a little bit about the Sun Devils. Tell me your thoughts about Herm and don't they? He brought in Marvin Lewis, right? Isn't Marvin Lewis the defensive coordinator now? Tell me what your thoughts are about them, because I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't watch a lot of Pac-10 or Pac-12, I should say. Sorry, because
it's 2 teams.
That's what I'm saying. But I did watch the Oregon game last year, and I watched Jaden Daniels, and I watched JH throw about 3 interceptions that were the worst I've ever seen. That was the worst I've ever seen. Anyway,
everyone saw that game for Oregon, and it was just. Daddy. Hey, hold on one second.
Yeah.
I'm on here. I can't talk.
Daddy,
what?
Which time can you sleep?
Tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow.
No, I know on my bed.
No, tomorrow. I have to.
But
I got 15 minutes.
But 15 more minutes,
yep.
So you can sleep with me.
Yep, 15 more. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. You sure? We can always just like call this if you want.
We got like 10 minutes, but this is like the time. I was gonna say it was a tough night tonight because I had he actually had a football game, and then
nice.
And then I had to come here, so it was probably this time's a little tight. But back to what you're saying, I think that the Sun Devils, that game was just a bad game. I mean, Justin Herbert played a bad game. The defense didn't play a good game. That was not a good performance by Oregon. I think that kind of overinflated the hype for Arizona State. Arizona State's roster is not even really a top 25 roster. It's when it comes to baseline talent, they were like number 28 in the country. Jaden Daniels, he can do some good things. He was the number one dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. But then they don't have a great offensive line. Their defense is erratic. They have some good D-backs, but they don't have a great D-line. They definitely have holes on both sides of the ball. If Jaden Daniels plays to the level that he can and to the ability he has, sure, in a Pac-12 that's not very strong, I could see Arizona State possibly at least making it to the championship game, maybe winning it, perhaps, I don't know. But I do not think that they have a roster that is really capable of competing for a college football playoff spot, let alone really having even a snowball chance in hell at winning a national title.
I love the feedback. I just always thought that was like one of the weirdest hires I've ever seen. Like that to me at least made no sense. But then I watched them last year and I was like, I guess he can still coach, like, and obviously can recruit.
Yeah, so, he's not done like Arizona State has been, because I bicker with Arizona State fans a lot because they're like, oh, we beat you guys. I'm like, oh, okay. Arizona State, I think, has had one top 10 finish this century. And I think they've won one share of the Pac-12 title, I think, back in 2007. But for the most part, Arizona State has not been really relevant for this century, since 2000. So he's done as good as anyone. He's done better than most. He's won them 8-9 games. He's recruited pretty well. He's gotten a guy like Jaden Daniels. So yeah, Herm's done better than most. I do not think that they would have to get immensely better to be competing on a regular basis for Pac-12 titles, and way immensely better to really have a chance on the national stage in like a playoff.
And then just let's keep it in the same state there. Kevin Summerlin at Arizona hasn't been great. Has not been great. So talk to me a little bit more about, what are your thoughts on Arizona this year, or just in general the state of the program?
I think Arizona is the worst team in the Pac-12. I think they have the least talent of any team. I don't think they're good anywhere. I think their quarterback is probably the best position, Grant Gunnell. But I think for the most part, this is a team that just doesn't have any really top tier offensive linemen. Definitely have a very weak D line. Their best player was Colin Schooler, and he transferred out to Texas Tech. Actually, Brendan Schooler he was a former Duck. He transferred to Arizona. He ended up transferring to Texas. He caught a touchdown there. Week 1 against UTEP. So
sounds like Blake Barnett jumping around all these schools.
Yeah. I went to 3 schools in like a year. No, they're not good. And I think Kevin Sumlin is a coach that's really on the hot seat and probably has his butt saved because of the whole COVID pandemic. I think he'd be fired after this year, but probably won't be fired. But no, Arizona, I think it's between them and Colorado, and I probably give the edge right now to Arizona.
Yeah, and so speaking of Colorado, Mel Tucker 1 year out.
Boom.
Was that a pure money move, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's Big Ten. Big Ten pays better. It's more stability.
Or just the ambiance of Michigan State, whether compared to a Colorado Boulder team that's
which is crazy because Colorado back in my childhood was one of the powerhouses in college football.
Right.
When I grew up, and they had Cordell Stewart and Michael Westbrook and Rashad Salam, who's dead now, rest in peace, and Ray Caruth went to prison, rest in peace. But they had so many really good guys. He's won a share of the national title in the late '80s. So they have fallen on tough times, and they're not a good team. They have Carl Durrell. He was at UCLA, got fired, was not very good there. And overall, they're gonna just have a tough season, shortened season. But whoever they play, they're gonna probably not do very well.
Yeah, they have the Alabama transfer, the guy who just stopped
kicked off.
Yeah. Stop. Oh, did he get? No, he's reinstated. He's reinstated again.
He did?
Yeah. He got reinstated again.
At Colorado?
Yeah. What is?
I didn't know that.
Alfano. Yeah.
Who was the number one player in the nation by 247 Sports?
And literally just one day decided I'm not going to go to practice anymore. And I think that
He's probably good enough not to.
No, well, I think too, it's, and that's, going to the Alabama thing, and that's a discussion for a whole other day. But, I think that, and this is a question I'd love to hear your opinion on about, do you think recruits nowadays, they don't feed off of like the hard ass kind of style of coaching? Do you think that you'd rather, like, for example, a prime example that I always use, and I know that Clemson uses this in the recruiting room, is that you're going to have fun at Clemson, right? Like Dabo's not gonna be get in your face. He's not gonna, really, be a hard ass on you. And Saban is kind of the exact opposite of that. So, what do you think of as the recruiting style? Like, is that something that kids these days just, they don't tailor well to that type of coaching anymore? Or do you think it's still people are that brings out the best in people when you're hard on someone like that?
Well, it's hard to go against Nick Saban. He's won 5 national titles. Well, he's won 6. He's won 5 at Alabama. He continuously, year after year, lands the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 class in the nation. So whatever he does pretty well. But there is an element of this generation needing more of like a hopeful kind of upbeat. I've actually read an article recently on it. I forgot where I saw it, but they want hope, and they want to know that they're wanted, and they want to be the focus being on like positivity. And you see good recruiters, guys like a Dabo Sweeney or a Mario Cristobal or a Ryan Day, do seem to be more of that ilk. Tom Herman, to be more of that ilk. Lincoln Riley. I'm just trying to think of everyone. The newer generation of coach, and they're like the guys in their 30s and 40s, PJ Fleck. I'm just naming names. They are more of that positivity, hope, like social media, like memes, and you definitely do see that kind of vibe going out there with the more newer generation coach, as opposed to the Mark D'Antoni or the Nick Saban, or you can even consider Jim Harbaugh a little bit kind of a throwback, but he also is a little bit of a goofball himself. So I think it's moving that direction, and I think the younger coaches definitely seem to be more. They almost like someone like PJ Fleck is like almost a positive thinker coach. It's like, oh, you can be what you want to be,
right?
That kind of like compilation. To answer your question, yes, I do think it's kind of moving that direction, as opposed to the disciplinarian, the Tom Osborne's, the Nick Saban's, Bo Schemblechlers, the Woody Hayes. Yeah, I think it's moving a little more that direction.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just thought that that's going to be an interesting dynamic as particularly with this recruiting class too. And speaking of recruiting, have they figured out what they're going to do? Are they just not going to do the early signing period because? They are still. So you're gonna be playing games. The Big Ten is going to be playing games. The Pac-12 theoretically playing games, and then midweek you're going to have to do a national signing day, early signing day, and then you're going to prep for a game that's Saturday. That is nuts to me.
That's crazy.
That is nuts.
That's crazy. I know that, and not only that. Well, they all might be playing because of all these games getting canceled.
Yeah, you push some back. Yeah,
they've been pushing them back to December 12th. I think isn't the ACC title already being pushed to December 12th or 19th?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so you're having they might all be playing during signing day. It's like,
why would you not just push it, but just make it back to February? How it was?
Because I think the kids want it. The kids want
early enrollees.
It's for the kids. That's the thing. Yeah. It's for the kids. Yeah. Which, if you're going to get someone like these guys, like, hey, I'm signing that day, and you've already put in the work. Like, for instance, Mario Cristobal, he hasn't been having to prepare for games. He has a class right now, I think, of 21 guys. He could sign his class now, and it'll be a top 10 class. He wouldn't even have to get one more guy. As long as he gets every committed guy to sign, he has a top 10 class. And that's kind of how you, like Nick Saban right now. If he has everyone signed that he has committed, he has a top 5 class. Ryan Day, he has a top 5 class. So they got these guys in the boat. If they can say, hey, you want to sign? sign and come right in. Come right here January 1st. They kind of got like, but the people that are like kind of a little behind, got people that are not having as good of classes, maybe like a Penn State, a Texas A&M, and Auburn. Yeah, they're maybe trying to flip people last second. They're kind of on that like, well, are you changing your mind while they're having to plan games? And that's kind of an unenviable situation. So it definitely is nice to be Mario Cristobal, Ryan Day, Nick Saban, sitting there with classes being like, hey, as long as I can just let the guys know hey guys, you're committed to me, let's get this done. They can at least have a little more easy transition through the signing period.
And to that point, how much do you think not being able to have spring, not being able to have the ability for recruits to come on campus this fall, how much is that going to affect signing day, people flipping, or this class as it moves on, let's say in 2 years, like of people transferring and stuff? Because for example, I know Tennessee took a bunch of kids that have never even been to Knoxville ever. Not knocking Tennessee's class, that they came into Alabama and they saw an outside linebacker that was really highly recruited. But I'm just saying, like, overall, kids that can't visit, they've never even been to the school before, and then they commit, they get on campus and they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I want. This is not what I was told in my experience was going to be. And I know they've done like virtual tours and all of that stuff, but it's hard to really grasp. Like when I was looking at schools, right? Like I didn't know what I wanted until I was there. Like I was on campus itself. So how much do you think that's going to affect people flipping or in 2 years from now, let's say, like, does this class become the most transfer of all classes ever before? Something like that. How do you play that dynamic?
I heard Greg Biggins. Greg Biggins? He works for 247. Yeah, he's probably the main expert out west. Well, at first, like I remember Barton Simmons, he's the director of recruiting for 247, and they were like, they thought, I remember him and Trey Scott did a episode, and they said, and Bud Elliott, Trey Scott, Bud Elliott, and Barton Simmons for 247, and they said they think this is going to be the most flips of any cycle. This could be the most flips, but they were anticipating things opening back up. They were anticipating like official visits maybe happening in September and October, but the NCAA just came out and said until the end of the year, there's no visits. So I saw Biggins, and Biggins said no, because of that, people are probably just going to have to pick a school sight unseen. They maybe will take a trip on their own dime to the town to check it out, just maybe see the school on their own dime. It can't be official. But yes, he did actually say just what you said. He thinks it will be one of those things that people go there and a year down, they're like, man, I don't even like this town. And he thinks it's going to be a high transfer class. And anyhow, you have a bunch of guys keeping eligibility this year because no one loses eligibility.
Right.
So in general, next year you have your 85 guys plus the seniors, but then you have to get back down to 85 guys in the team. So in general, I got a feeling, yes, what's going to happen is you're going to have guys coming and they're going to decide, and I think you'll have coaches realizing it's not and realize they have to get down. And they're like, you're right, it's not a good fit. Sorry. And so I think there'll be a lot of coaches that'll be more willing to say, oh, you can get an immediate waiver somewhere else. Because what really causes the student athlete problems for getting immediate eligibility is usually the coaches don't allow it. They're like, they don't sign off on it, so then they have to go to the NCAA to appeal a waiver. I think you'll have coaches that be just like, you know what? You didn't get to visit. You came here and you realize it didn't turn out for you, and that's unfortunate. So I'm going to sign off, and you can then go play somewhere else. So yes, I think that's what happens. I think there's going to be a crap load of transfers out of this.
And you just brought up a really good point. Is the idea that you're going to have to get back down to 85 scholarships or whatever it is. And for teams like Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, there's a natural turnover because guys just go pro early. So you have a ton of juniors that are going to declare and stuff like that. But for schools like, let's say Cal, right? Cal, those guys, like their average scholarship, their player is going to stay for 4 years. Yeah. So when you're going to have to get back down to 85 scholarships and you want to take a recruiting class of 20 plus players, the numbers just aren't going to even out.
Yeah.
So, and in turn, that's going to either hinder your recruiting because you're going to have to purposely limit yourself, or you're going to have to tell guys like, look, you can either transfer or like, I don't know what we're going to figure something out.
I think that's what's going to happen with a lot of. So, like, obviously, if a guy is a senior, so he would have been a senior this year, and he's coming back next year, unless it's an injury. You would have to think, why is he coming? So, let's say he's probably, if he's good enough to be, if he's playing as a senior, he's good enough. He's probably played enough college football to go to the NFL, correct? Right. So, if a guy's wanting to come back for an extra year, he's probably not good enough to go to the NFL. So if he's playing for those top tier schools, they're probably going to be telling him to go elsewhere because you think about it, they're like Alabama. If a guy's wanting another year and he's already played what would have been a senior year, but because he didn't lose his year of eligibility, he's obviously not good enough to go to the NFL. So then I think Nick is like, well, you're probably not going to play here the next year. And so he probably will organically move guys out. That'll probably be pretty simple for the better teams. You're right. For the lesser teams, they can't. Maybe that guy is good enough. I mean, he's good enough for them. So it is. I think all of this COVID and all of this that has happened, probably in the end, and not being able to get official, all that's going to end up happening is people are just going to say, well, Ohio State's good. Well, I think Alabama's going to win. I think Oregon's going to be the best team out there. I think Clemson's the best. And the good teams are just going to get their guys anyways. And it's going to become less. It's going to become more and more the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that's what college football has really become. And it's going to become more that way. There's going to be like you said, 10 teams. It's going to be like someday it's going to be like, oh, so there are going to be these 5 teams, and it's going to be one team from every conference, and everyone else is just going to be like, well, maybe something crazy happens, like the quarterback dies the night before, because it just, you're seeing it this year. You're seeing, the classes like Ohio State, number 1, Alabama, number 2, Oregon, number 3. I think number 4 is Clemson, number 5 is LSU, number 6, Georgia. That they're always those are the best teams. So Oklahoma, so it's like they're going to be good again, and they're going to get all the guys again. And even though they're not getting people on official visits, they're still going to get them. Yeah, it's not going to change their world. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, so I think we're almost at time, right, or something like that. But before we jump off, I just wanted to ask you one question because I love hearing what people's opinions are about it. Are you for or against playoff expansion?
This year or in general?
Let's go with in general.
In general, I'm kind of probably no.
Okay.
No, probably not. I kind of like how it is. I grew up in the bowl era. I grew up in the bowl coalition. I then went to the BCS, and I always thought a 4-team playoffs to give they just expanded it a little more. I like college football the way it is. I love the dynamics of are they in or are they out, and it's always kind of been like that. And back in the day, it was like, is it going to be a shared national title? So the fact we even got to here is good. No, I don't want anything different. But this year, yes, because it's just not even at all.
Right.
9 games, 10 games, 11 games, 5 games. So it's not like let's say Ohio State's good, but they're 6-0. I think they're better than Georgia at 10-2, but Georgia played 12 games and Ohio State. And that's just kind of one of those. It's like dumb. It's like, well, because Ohio State's conference thought it was a good idea to postpone the season.
Right.
So, but they're clearly a really good team. They have a ton of talent. They have really good players. They could possibly win it all. Yeah, in a year like that, I just think there's too much up and down that I think this year to say all the Power Fives, and maybe even because you need a 16 possibly to do a 16 playoff, and maybe the top-rated group of 5, and just say, hey, this year, win your conference, win a Power 5, you're in. Be the best group of 5 team, you're in. And because there's really no other way to do it. So, yes, this year I wouldn't mind, but going forwards, no. How about you?
I'm with you 100%. I think expansion makes no sense. From any angle that I've ever heard, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it doesn't matter anyway because they signed, a 10-year TV deal? So they're not changing anything until that TV deal's up anyway. And we still got 6 more years of this, I think, with the TV deal. So I have yet to hear one aspect of it that makes sense, except for teams whining when they don't get in. And
How about this year?
This year, I think just for to try to keep it as normal as possible, just keep it how it is.
Okay.
I think if you were going to get creative, this would have been the year to do it. But there's already so many wrinkles, and we're just now at the precipice of getting all the Power Five back in to even playing. So I think
we're not even there yet.
I know. So let's hold our breath. But just to add another layer of making the playoff some type of I just don't think the college football world, both the power that be and the fans, could handle another wrinkle to this whole thing. So let's just keep it how it is and play it out.
Got it, man. Well, we had a good conversation. We kind of were, I don't know.
We're all over the place.
We went to 30 different angles. Hey, it was fun though.
Yeah, it was.
So we'll probably be doing this. Probably some flexibility to everyone that's listening out there, but we'll be doing this as much as possible during the college football season in particular. And we actually have games this week. We have the SEC, Alabama playing Missouri. We have, you have Texas playing Texas Tech. TCU against, is it TCU versus Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So this week you have a good slate. This is the first week. Let's be honest. No one gets that fired up about Texas State versus Texas San Antonio or Navy versus BYU. I mean, you try to talk people into it, but it's it's just not quite. But this week you actually have the SEC playing. You have solid Big 12 matchups. You're getting better in the ACC. So you're starting to see better games, and it's starting to feel like a typical college football season as much as you can through this crazy year. So
what game, before we jump off, what game are you most excited for this weekend?
Man, good question. Is there a top 25 matchup this weekend?
Because they just updated the rankings. I don't think so.
So hold on. Let me give you this answer. So schedule week 4. This weekend, if I had to look at one game, okay, I have a leader. I have a leader in the clubhouse. But I'm going to see if I'm going to look at it. Oh, no, there's a couple top 25. There's a few top 25. Well, because Army's in the top 25.
Right. That's right.
Okay, I would say Kentucky versus Auburn.
That was my pick too.
And because those teams actually could both be in the top 25. It's actually possible they could be. I think Kentucky has gotten really good under Stoops. I think they have a good team. I think they play good, solid football. I think they've kind of seem almost Wisconsin-ish in the or something similar to that, in the SEC. And then Auburn is. I'm not the biggest Patrick Nix fan. Patrick is dead. A Bo Nix fan, but he was highly touted. He's legacy and I think Auburn still has good talent. They're still a top 15 roster. So I like that game. I think in Auburn, I'd take Auburn. But
I wonder if because Joey Gatewood's waiver has yet to be approved.
Why?
Yeah, has not been approved yet. So that's going to be interesting to see if, maybe, who knows, midweek he gets approved and then it's Joey Gatewood versus Bo Nix on Saturday. How crazy
is it Terry Wilson right now?
Terry Wilson, yeah.
Okay, and he was Oregon. He was an Oregon guy. He came the same year as Justin Herbert.
Really? I did not know that.
Yep, went to Oregon, and when you run into Justin Herbert, you probably say, "Well, this is probably not going to play this year,
probably not,
or ever."
Yeah. But hey, look at him now. Look at him.
By the way, did you see Herbert's performance in the?
I was dramatically impressed, except for the
I know.
except for the scramble. You're looking at the sticks, right? Like literally could have walked to it and
And
decided to
he's
throw
really fast.
a 50-yard just nonsense. Like,
No, and the thing is Herbert's fast. He's like a big,
well,
fast dude.
the scamper in the Rose Bowl was not bad.
He easily would have gained like 20 yards. I'm like, I could see like Tom Brady throwing it, or maybe like a slow prodding Jameis Winston. But I'm like, Herbert's one of the faster quarterbacks in the NFL. Run it there.
I know.
I agree. But he was good. I mean,
I was impressed. I really was impressed.
And I'll say, so we can end on this, but I was always the same about Justin Herbert. When it comes to physical ability, he's just a big, strong-armed, athletic guy. I mean, he has every tool in the world. The only thing that he was his consistency. He just was inconsistent throughout college. And I said, if he can get someone to mentor him and to just like, hey, make him be consistent and make him just kind of relax. I think a lot of times he would tense up and you'd almost seem frozen. If someone did relax him and just go play, even that throw was dumb, but it's like whatever. At least he was like just making it happen. I think bringing that out of him will be the best for him, and I think you'll see him have a successful.
Want a quick trivia question?
Sure.
Justin Herbert's quarterbacks coach with the Chargers. Do you know who it is?
Yeah, Pep Hamilton.
Pep Hamilton, who was the head coach of the DC Defenders, ripped the XFL.
And he used to be offensive coordinator for Michigan, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
All right. I did.
All right, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, Rossetti and Turner. That's our Nick and Tyler.
We're gonna have to come up with something. But
yeah. Next week we'll talk about we're probably not going to talk SEC a ton, but we probably should touch on it.
Yeah.
I mean, until the Big Ten and Pac-12 are playing, let's touch on Bama and Texas, whoever, and just like click on all the games until our conference starts kicking into gear. And you're going to have to, because if we're going to be covering Pac-12, you're going to have to watch Pac-12 this year.
I know. I'm about to stay up late past my bedtime. I don't know how I'm going to do this.
It's so hard to watch the Big Ten. You just get up at 11. Their games are on.
But
the Pac-12 is a little harder. So I did.
All right, man. Have a good night. Tell the son I said hello.
Yeah, he interrupted halfway. All right.
All right. See you, man.
I see you, dude.
Bye.